Iowans know a thing or two about a hard day's work. That's why we do things the right way at Barntown Brewing. Grain-to-glass beers brewed in-house. Scratch-made food, handcrafted with fresh, locally sourced ingredients. We work hard for the reward of watching our guests enjoy great food and beer. Barntown Brewing. West Des Moines, Waukee.
Craving the one and only Fong's Pizza? We thought so. Fong's Pizza in Cedar Rapids now delivers. Order direct delivery or curbside pickup from Fong's Pizza by calling 320-9992. All of your Fong's favorites and a Fong's spin on the classics, from their mega pepperoni to the Iowan and street taco. Delivery, takeout, carside to go. Call 320-9992. Fong's Pizza, New Bow District, downtown Cedar Rapids.
Hello and welcome to another installment of the Hawkeye podcast. I'm John Miller along with Marc Morehouse. We appreciate that you are along with us. We record this one on, what is today, the 8th day of April 2021. And yesterday, as we record this on Thursday, several Iowa defensive coordinator Phil Parker, quarterbacks coach Ken O'Keefe, they met with the media. We have name, image, and likeness stuff swirling. We have the Iowa Athletic Department borrowing $50 million from the university. We have transfer portal speculation. It's kind of a busy early April, Marc.
Yeah, I think the pandemic has created its own news cycle. I mean, every time. I mean, Barta doesn't talk very much to not just Barta, but Ferentz. I mean, everybody. They're kind of limited in their entries for when they're available to talk, so they don't talk as much, and so old news kind of becomes new news again, and the pandemic kind of keeps recycling over itself. I do think there was significant new news this week, and that's the athletics department borrowing $50 million from the university. I think that's. I gave John and I in our pregame, and I want to write about this eventually. So I don't know if I want to use this right now, but why not? Huge Sopranos fan, Agent Harris, the FBI agent, and I think the last episode kind of gave a fist bump when he found out that. I don't want to. Sopranos have been out for 15 years or whatever.
Spoiler warnings are no longer being called for that show.
Okay.
Even though I haven't seen it.
He pumps his fist when Phil Leotardo, I think his name was, Billy Batts, the guy who played Billy Batts in R.I.P. He just passed away. Played Billy Batts in Goodfellas. I don't know if you've seen that. Goodfellas?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay, he's the guy. Go get your shine box with the great hair.
One of my favorite lines that I use often on Twitter.
Yes. He gets killed. Tony's team mob wins, and Agent Harris goes, yes. So yeah, obviously the FBI agent shouldn't be cheering for the mob. I used the Iowa doesn't use tax subsidies as a little bit of a, take that, because you get a lot of people coming at you. You know, I never did work for the university, blah, blah, blah. But you still get a lot of people coming at you with the taxpayer thing. And boy, oh boy, I'd love to put that stop sign up and say, oh, wait a minute. It's not your money. It's not your money. They can do all the stupid crap they want. It's not your money. No, it is your money. I don't know if that'll spring another. I don't see more oversight coming, but I don't know. It's a different world now. It does not mean the athletic department's broke. It means they can't say that line. And I did a little bit of research. You're talking about 23, 24 schools that fit in that. I wonder what that number will be like coming out of COVID.
Right. And yes, that is a line, Marc, that I actually used on Twitter as recently as the last 10 days. somebody coming at me before the story came out. Well, this is a bad usage of tax dollars. Taxes shouldn't pay for blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, they don't. Iowa's athletic department is self-funded. Now go get your shine box.
Now
That
it's the
kind of a thing.
The fun part is always when you see the short circuiting go on because they thought they had a great take and they came at you with their best. And you say 3 words like, it's not your money. It's not taxpayer money.
Right.
And that short circuits a lot of thinking. And then what else they got? Well, they got you on the line. They're going to come at you with something.
So yeah, that's the thing.
So you
They
get to
got you
watch
on the
them
line.
short circuit, and eventually you just dismiss it because it wasn't your money. So now, does everybody have a point?
I think they do.
Yeah, they do actually. I mean, I don't see how they don't. So if you're keeping score, obviously, that's a bad thing for athletics. I don't think you can blame that on anybody.
No,
I mean, that's a pandemic thing, and Barta said $70 million at the beginning. I did think there'd be a bigger market for Iowa to get a loan because I thought maybe that that whatever company can lend $70 million, Goldman Sachs or whomever, I don't even know. I thought they would bet big on college sports coming back in a big way. I wonder maybe if the market was too exorbitant with the interest rates, and Iowa was like, no, we got this, we can do this.
That's possible, Mark. That's very possible, and it's interesting right now in the capital world. With my energy company, we've been for the past 3-4 months. We're going through audited financials because you have to have your financials audited before you go to a bank to make the best pitch to see what type of leverage you can get off of your equity in your business. Is it going to be a $5 million line? Is it going to be a $10 million line? And it's not as in some ways, there's a lot of cash out there right now that's ready to come off the sidelines and be injected. But in some areas, in some ways, it's not. And maybe some companies, depending on what genre you're in. But when you look at college athletics, Mark, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to put you in the role of a bank president right now, and you get to make the final decision.
All right.
And the University of Iowa comes to you. And they say, we have a need for $50 million. We're looking to pay this back over the course of 10 to 15 years. And let's just throw interest rate aside for a second. And you being knowledgeable about what type of changes may be coming down the pike relative to potentially turning the amateur model entirely upside down as the way things are now with college athletics. Are you comfortable lending that kind of money right now to an athletic department who also has a number of long-term asset loans already on the books, like, the first Kinnick Stadium renovation? And Iowa sold some bonds to back that, but that's some debt service. The Carver Hawkeye Arena renovations, all the things Iowa's basically done to facilities the last 10 or 15 years, a lot of that is still on the books. Are you comfortable lending that money?
I am, because I think, college football is the second most, in my opinion, college football is the second most important, popular, whatever you want to put in front of it, sport in the country. It's, NFL is the king, right. College football is number 2. So I'm betting, if I'm a bank president, I'm betting on money coming back. I look at 2023. Is it 2023 with the next TV? I think it's 2023, 2024,
Gosh,
somewhere in there.
Snuck up on us so quick. Holy cow.
I know. So you're looking at that, and you're looking at the market, and you're going, somebody's, a couple $1 billion is coming the Big Ten's way.
Right.
Probably. And then that, for Iowa, that's $55 million a year. Right now it is, or a couple years ago it was. It'll probably be $60 million in the next 5 years. So I'm betting on that. I'm betting on money flowing back into college football. I'm betting on the next TV contract to be mega. Interest rate, it must be a deal breaker. I mean,
maybe you're right.
Maybe they're like, oh yeah, sure, here's 30%.
Right.
And then everybody's offering 30%. Then you just look at Bruce Harreld and go, dude, how about a real low interest? And that wasn't talked about in the there are a lot of holes in that story.
It's the first thing I looked at in the story was for the interest rate. I'm like, is this 10% or is this 6%? What is it, the interest?
I think that to me, that I kind of lost my train of thought there, but the interest rate, it tells me that the interest rate, the market was not that great,
Right.
that Iowa needed the help. And I think if you look at Iowa athletics right now, that's gone. And then you see things like the Hawkeye Express ending. It doesn't mean they're broke. It just some of the things are going away. Now, maybe the Hawkeye Express, John, one thing that freaks me out about the world is there are so many machines out there that only one guy knows how to fix and run. I mean, if you look at a lot of manufacturing that's still going around in Iowa, some of the smaller, I mean, in Eastern Iowa, even some of the smaller places, yeah, it's like a 70-year-old guy and he knows how to fix it and no one else does.
Right.
And it feels like we kind of hit that.
Right. Well, you may be right. Now, if you need your, that's not really going to be a good analogy to bring into this. So I'm just going to drop it right there. Age and wisdom come along with certain things. Some analogies aren't good to connect. But yeah, I think the interest rate, you might be onto something, Mark. And if it was an interest rate, if we're hypothesizing, if it was an interest rate related decision, it might mean that those banks out there look at that proposition as higher risk than maybe some people do, which was what I was trying to allude to, but we don't know that for sure. But I agree with you. The bully pulpit, that little bludgeon that we had to club people over the head with is no longer there, because this is a 10 to 15 year time horizon repayment plan, according to the article in the Cedar Rapids Gazette that we've been referencing all along here.
Yeah, sorry, Vanessa Miller, she's fantastic. Her kids wrestle, by the way, and Vanessa weighs like 12 pounds. I think her kids are going to be Spencer Lee, like little
lightweights
dominators. But anyway, she's a really cool lady. I worked with her in the Iowa City office for many years.
Obviously Harold was mentioned in the article, but Harold is no longer Iowa's president. He's been in Colorado a lot of the pandemic. He's not really been around. Yeah, and he announced several months ago that he was going to be done, and he'd tendered his resignation. He was going to stay on until Iowa hired a president, and that recently changed. So he's either a short timer or he's already out the door. I can't remember which. And that's an interesting thing, hiring a new president during things like this. And you've got Gary Barta that's been there, and he's been there for quite some time. And you mentioned earlier, Mark, this isn't Gary's fault. This is nobody's fault. A pandemic is nobody's fault. Not having fans in the stands like they did last year, you can't blame anybody for that. But this, while it's not Gary's fault, it's his problem that he has to help Iowa get out of. And there's a phrase in the trading community that, if you're out buying this and you're adding to your portfolio this, and you're not, sometimes you run out of powder. And when you're borrowing $50 million from your university, you're running short on powder. And Gary right now is up to his elbows in alligators relative to his job, and pursuant to some potential lawsuits, impending lawsuits, ongoing lawsuits relative to some decisions he made during the pandemic to cut some sports, and backtracked on some of them. Hasn't been a good look on others. That's a pretty big quagmire that he's got surrounding him right now.
You throw in the Circle of Champions or whatever the basketball thing was with Roy Marble.
Yeah. The Ring of Honor that hasn't happened.
Hasn't had a stone lifted on it. It looks pretty empty. It looks shabby. And that some of that stuff is on Barta, who I really, at the end of Sally Mason, I thought that was the end of Barta, and that didn't happen. And since
he
then,
and Bruce became thick as thieves, seemingly very quickly.
And conservative guys on a liberal campus probably found comfort, or at least ear with each other, which makes sense. That's how the world works. I don't expect him to last very long with the new president. I think the new president will, and his or her team will give that a review, and there'll be a quick decision.
That brings up a topic that I was thinking about earlier today that I'll introduce here. the things that went on last summer, summer of 2020, relative to the Iowa football program, we all remember them. We all know them. Ultimately, it cost Chris Doyle his job. There's going to be a new president that Iowa's going to be hiring at some point in time in the next 6 months, more than likely. And I would imagine, Mark, there are several corners and hallways within the University of Iowa campus that were none too thrilled to have the University of Iowa's name tied to some things last summer that made the university at large look bad. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in some of those coffee rooms when, the University of Iowa's name was on ESPN relative to, potential racial inequities and mistreatments. Again, we all read those stories. You wrote about those things last summer. The pendulum effect is a very real thing. We've seen it play out in coaching decisions and searches just in the last 15 years. You go from Steve Alford to Todd Licklider to Fran McCaffrey. Mm-hmm. The pendulum effect is a normal and natural psychological and social impact where your replacement is different on the far side of the pendulum from the person that you had. Otherwise, you wouldn't have got rid of the person that you had. Kind of makes me wonder. I'm not saying I was going to go back to a Hunter Rawlings era, but it makes me wonder if this next presidential hire may not be as athletically minded as some of Iowa's recent presidents. And if that's the case, that could be some uh-ohs.
Yeah, it's hard to speculate.
That's a very much a hypothetical.
That's probably a worst case.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
Probably a worst case.
That's a worst case. Yeah.
I do think though that the circumstances that surrounded Harold's presidency at the University of Iowa was kind of dictated by Bruce Rastetter.
Rastetter, right?
Blanking on his first name, and I apologize to everybody. But
yeah.
Are they both Bruce?
I'm kind of thinking Bruce is bouncing around in my head.
Anyway, he was in charge of the Board of Regents, and so things were kind of game for where Harold was named president from the business world, and it was going to be the big conservative whopper for the University of Iowa to have to swallow. Well, it didn't really turn out that way. I think Harold turned out to be a different sort of leader than maybe Rastetter thought. And so now I do think, John, I think there's just value in what you say about the pendulum effect. And I do think, probably something like that happens. And I think something like that really happens in Iowa for the Iowa AD job. Whenever that opens, I would say February.
Yeah. And I was wondering, does Iowa need a kind of a wartime consigliere? And if there are changes at the Iowa AD job, not an easy job. There are a lot of very difficult waters to navigate. And some people might say that Gary Barta is the right guy to do it. Some people might say that he's not. This is an aside since I'm talking about athletic director. But this man has, a foot in the Iowa camp. At least he did once upon a time, and got annoyed every year at Big Ten Media Days when some Iowa writers, myself included at some point in time, would ask him to go down memory lane relative to his time at Iowa after he'd been at Wisconsin for 15 or 20 or 30 years.
And won 3 Rose Bowls.
Barry Alvarez retiring as Wisconsin's athletic director. I think, Mark, Barry's time in Wisconsin predates your time as a sports writer. Were you still in college? Almost?
I was not. I want to say he was early 90s.
89, 90?
Yeah, I want to say 90, 92, somewhere in there. I was in Fairmont, Minnesota, first job, sports writer.
You still were using notebooks back then.
Oh, yeah. Heck, I was still using those calculator-looking computers. But I can give you this: my wife went to University of Wisconsin when we first met, and her freshman year would have been the fall of '86. I can't remember who they played. We went to a Wisconsin football game. You could have shot a cannon into half of the thing, and no one would have been hurt.
Wow!
It was brutal. I mean, it was not watchable. It was dead. And Barry, you see the value of an AD who's I don't know. Wisconsin's won champion. They've been to a Final Four. They've been to a championship game in basketball. So it wasn't just football. Wisconsin also won a men's hockey
They're crowds for
I
hockey.
think they just won the women's hockey championship. So Alvarez has been great for Wisconsin, and it was a marriage made in heaven. Could that have happened at Iowa? The football coach AD thing has never really married. I mean, it did marry it once, and it was great. But Evashevsky, it didn't end well. I mean,
no,
it just didn't end well. And then I put Iowa in the dark ages, 20 years or 19, was it 19 or 20 years of non-winning
seasons. Yeah.
So, you come back to that and, and this is a long way of saying, I did once ask Kirk Ferentz if he wanted to be the AD. And I told John and I talked about this at the beginning, and Kirk said, I don't envision that.
No, not a chance.
So I think it'll be very interesting. The next AD is. I'm just one name that I like, and I really enjoyed working with him when he was at Iowa. Was Gene Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was fantastic, and if you look at what's going on at K-State, I think it's his. He's already he had a hell of a deal with that Bill Snyder, Sean Snyder, and then hired a football coach. Right. I think he kind of nailed it. And I think the Kansas State community's got to be like, that's our AD, man. Chris Kleiman's doing good things. K-State football's, it's probably not quite even with Iowa State, but it's in the ballpark.
No,
I think Iowa State's kind of on another level right now. I like Gene Taylor a lot. I do think, though, that a minority diverse candidate will probably get a really good look at Iowa.
I would agree with you. I would agree. On to the football field. This, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Phil Parker, Ken O'Keefe talking with reporters this week wasn't really newsy. It's always nice to hear Phil talk. He's a fun guy to listen to what he has to say. You and I talked a little bit about this last week relative to depth charts. He threw out that there's, he's got kind of a 10-man rotation going on the defensive line right now. I don't think anybody thinks they'll have a 10-man rotation by the time the season rolls around.
I'm not sure they need one anymore.
No, probably 6, 7.
Yeah, the way they play defense, you got a guy like Davion last year who could really run. I know you don't have that this year, obviously, but when you have defensive tackles who can run like him, you don't really need 10 guys. And if you look around the league, my guess is 8 solid. Hope for 8 solid. Phil talked about 10. I got the roster up. I'll go. Here would be my 10. Yaha Black. YA. I'm sorry. YA Black. Right. I knew I would forget how to say his name.
I looked it up before the episode, so don't feel bad.
By the way, he's from Marshall, Minnesota. That is that is where I think season 3 of Fargo was shot. I mean, that's the middle of nowhere, Minnesota, Southwest Minnesota, where Fairmont was, where my first job was. So yeah, he's one. Isaiah Bruce, I think, is on it. Deontay Craig, probably on it. Joe Evans, certainly on it. That's 4. Mm-hmm. Logan Jones is 5. Mm-hmm. Noah Shannon is 6. John Wagner's 7. Zach Van Valkenburg's 8. And then you kind of stretch a little bit. Logan Lee, I think, is, man, I wrote about him 2 years ago. I'm surprised he didn't get much playing time last year. I expect that to change this year. He's 8 or 9. And then Scott, I think Doctorman told me they said good things about Ethan Herkett. So that you could see 10 guys. I think what I don't see is
not 10 dudes, just 10 guys, but not 10 dudes.
Right. And I think that if what we've heard about Black is true, and I believe it. He might be special, and that makes me wonder. They might be okay at 4 defensive tackles. I think 4 is a good number to have. Maybe the 4th guy doesn't. Maybe he gets less than 10 snaps a game. Mm-hmm. But I think it's all good. It keeps you fresh, and in case you get locked into a long drive, it's good to have that. I'm hoping Deontay Craig can provide a little punch on the edge, a little pass rush, because there's so much pressure on the defensive ends to put on pass rush. I expect Van Valkenburg to be Drew Ott-like. Maybe double-digit sacks, 8, 9, 10 sacks.
He climbed the ladder all season last year.
Agree, 100%, 100%. I thought it was interesting. Phil talked about John Wagner again. They thought about tackle. They like him at end. I'm okay with Iowa having that big, strong, as long as he plays the run the way that they need him to, and as long as plays are spilling where they need to spill, and whoever's the middle linebacker, Seth Benson this year, if he's there to plug the gap, so it's not in the words of Amani Jones, a long ass touchdown. I'm okay with a strong defensive end who plays the run well. Maybe 3 or 4 sacks, or pressures. I'm okay with that. You can give that up. But I thought that was interesting. I thought Phil always good. I think they're the secondary. They've almost got an embarrassment of riches back there.
They do.
I just don't see a lot of playing time for people outside of the starters. A guy I want to see develop is Reggie Bracey. I think they kind of need a safety to move up in the world a little bit. And he did. And Phil mentioned Sebastian Castro. He's been around long enough to probably know what he's doing out there and be okay and hit. But I think what was the other thing he talked about? There's defense.
He talked about Logan Jones reminded him of Mitch King.
But he pulled that one back, which I thought was really cool.
He pulled it back quick.
I would have done the same thing. I'd have written that and I would have written that, and I would have talked myself into leaving that, and then I would have worked like hell to prove it, which would have been pretty hard to do without the kid having any snaps. So that was a good move by Phil. I like that, but that's promising. That's promising. You have to love to hear that. He said good things about Xavier Williams. That doesn't suck. It's great to have a third corner, fourth corner, however it works in there. I like the competition there.
You talked about Terry Roberts on Twitter.
Yeah, he's a guy, to me, I love the era connection. I'm old enough to where, Bob Sanders, Javon Johnson, Ed Hinkle. And so I love that connection. And he's an undersized guy, but he's really proven himself in special teams. Every cool special teams play, it seems like he's been around. So Kirk says good stories. Hell yeah. I was always a huge fan of the good stories because that made my job easier, John.
Yeah, the color just spilled right out. You're just picking threads out and away you go.
Yeah.
Okay. I give you public permission from now for as long as we do this to slap me down and say, no, John, I think you're wrong. Okay. Just do it. You won't embarrass me. I can live with it. I'm going to say something right now, and I'm risking recency bias, but I'm not doing this lightly. I think the back seven on this football team, while it may not have a Desmond King on it just yet, maybe it does in an emerging Matt Hankins, I don't know, but he still has to prove it. I think man 1 through 7 in whatever order of this back seven might be the most solid with fewest collective weaknesses that Iowa's had in the back seven since, I don't know, 2004. I mean, a long time. And they've had some really good ones. I think from Backer to Belton at Cash to the experience they have at the 4 secondary positions, I think if they stay healthy, this could be one of the best that Parker's had.
So you're throwing linebackers in there too.
Yes, I'm throwing linebackers in there. I don't think they're Hodge or Greenway. I'm just saying that collectively. So if Hodge and Greenway are there, yeah, they're really high. But there might have been a weak link. Antoine Allen was ish sometimes, but I think this back seven, everyone, I think there's high levels of competence at every position in this back seven, and maybe a higher level of competence at each position and adding the total than they've had in a while. Maybe I'm doing a horrible job of trying to explain what.
No, I got you. I'm kind of with you in the whole. I think if you look at Hankins and Xavier Williams, let's say they're competing, 2 pretty accomplished guys. You look at Dane Belton, who's really kind of climbed the ladder. I think he's an established player. I think he's probably going to be in line for all conference this year, second team, third team. maybe first team. I don't know. Kayvon Merriweather, his game has grown. Jack Kerner, give me the hammer safety and give it to me every damn year. Jake Gervais. Did you see him being in the NFL as long as he's been in the NFL?
Right.
Those hammer safety, the 6 foot, 6 foot to 6'2", 205 to 215 pound safety. Iowa makes a living off that guy as long as it's a good tackler.
Bolin and Pagel and so it's all the way through.
They come downhill and they finish plays, and I think that there's huge value in that. And the way that Phil depends on his defensive backs to play run support. I mean, the play is spill into a corner sometimes. So I once in a while a safety will have the edge. So I love that. I love that these guys are engaged. And the one thing, John, I would say you're wrong on in this whole thing is that there isn't a star. There isn't a Desmond. There isn't a Micah Hyde. There isn't a Josh Jackson. So,
right.
But that doesn't mean that they can't be as good as a unit. So, and I also wouldn't say interceptions are the be all end all for these guys. Cover the one thing, there's a lot of pass rush things that I think are unfairly kept in football. Hurries, I think, are inconsistent. I think hurries and quarterback hits and quarterback disruption and pass breakups and the way that a defense could make a quarterback change his decision in the last minute or last second, that all adds up to good pass defense. And
right.
Iowa's been tied together that way. This year, I do worry about the pass rush. Linebackers, Phil talked about a little bit. I think it's almost imperative they get Justin Jacobs going. I don't know in what. He's got to win something, too. He's got to go out there and win it. But I think it's time. He'll be a third-year sophomore. It's time to go.
Yeah, athletes like that, you want to get them on the field as long as they're competent. Ken O'Keefe talked a bit about quarterbacks, and I mean, he said that Padilla had a complete grasp of the Iowa offense. Said that Deuce is a little behind Padilla in that regard. Which, when coaches say that, it means he's probably quite a bit behind, which is understandable, considering there wasn't a spring last year. And there's a Deuce Hogan question that will come up in the text that I'll read later from folks that submitted those. I still, and this is always a topic, and I don't want to spend every podcast talking about it. I'll be shocked if it's anybody other than Spencer Petras at starter, unless there's an injury. And no, I would not expect all three of Padilla and Petras and Hogan, if everyone finishes this year healthy, to all be on the 2022 Iowa roster.
Yes. And you always get dragged into this, John. And it just,
thank you, John Marshall.
You kind of have to speculate on somebody transferring. And I hate that. I hate that.
You hated that back when you were like having to go to press conferences. You don't anymore, Martin. You're free now.
It's true.
Free.
It's true.
And I get why you did, because you have to look these guys. I totally get it. I'm not saying you did anything wrong.
No. There is a delicate sort of thing.
There is.
Because you do actually talk to him. And a funny story, I think somebody blamed the internet the question that Spencer got. I keep calling him Tyler Childers. I get that in my head. Spencer said this week about critics. He said, I'm sorry, fans, I don't listen to you. I'm just kind of focused on myself, yada, yada. I was glad he got that out. It doesn't mean much, but I'm just glad he got that out. And I think it's a healthy attitude. I mean, you have to kind of just face up to critics. And, who are the critics? One time in a press conference, John, when I first started, I blame the internet. Whenever I asked a coach a question, I was like, "Yeah, can you believe those assholes on the internet are saying this about you?" Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm the internet too.
It's my subconscious.
So I stopped doing that, John. I stopped blaming you and Tom Kakert and all those guys. I stopped just blaming you guys, And what roundabout? I can't remember what quarterback it was. Somebody said somebody was in the Des Moines Register. I think it was Marc, maybe asking a question. What do you say to your critics? And I something, and I kind of jumped in a little bit. It was Stanley, and I said, "Hey, I'm your critic, so let's talk about what I don't like about your game." And you just kind of you are the critic. I mean, you ask a question. It's you don't have to pin it on somebody. You have an honest intellectual, curiosity about, how a guy's doing, and you want to ask the question, you got to ask the question. So that's a long way of saying basically, not my problem anymore.
No, it's not.
But let's give one up for the writers. Let's give one up for the writers, because they did get O'Keefe to spill out the quarterback depth chart.
Yes.
Which leads to, somebody's probably transferred. Somebody's probably never thrown a football for Iowa.
Yeah. I don't know who that's going to be. We'll all find out, and we'll see how they'll see, the players will see how the reps are doled out in practice this year, and the players will see who's performing and who's not. So there's still a lot yet to be written on that.
Yes.
But Spencer, when Spencer was talking about critics, he's like, I don't pay attention to that, and I no disrespect to the fans, but I don't care. There's one of the things he said there, I believe him. One of the things he said there, I don't. I'm not saying he's a liar. Is one, I don't believe that he's not aware of what's being said. Two, I do believe him. You have to get in that bunker that you don't care. I was talking about this with Jordan Bohannon on Monday, and the first decade of my career, whatever it is that I do, I used to actually go out and seek out what people were saying about me. That's incredibly arrogant. That's it, and it's stupid. It's just dumb, and it affected me. And then around 2012, 2013, I made a decision. I'm like, I'm never doing this again, and I'm choosing not to give a damn what anybody thinks about me. That was about the time I turned 40, when I began to enter those old man years. And I'm fully throated in the old man years now, and I love every second of not giving a damn, and it's the truth. And I hope that Spencer really doesn't care. Seemingly still a little young pie to get there, but when you're in behind the walls of Fort Kinnick the way that they are, he has a chance to not really hear that, especially during the last year that was a pandemic year. So I'm sure that he's aware of things, but hopefully he really doesn't care, because that would be really, really good.
So yeah, my dad. When I worked at the Telegraph Herald, my dad, is still alive, and he was in Dubuque, and I got a really nasty letter one day in the paper, and this is back when you had to have your address still attached to it. So my dad wants to go pour gas on this guy's on this guy's lawn, like F you and its lawn. Right. So we're gearing up, we're getting in the truck ready to do that, and I'm like, Dad, what are we doing? No, I'm just kidding. We didn't do this, but
I was like, damn, that's a big step. You were right there.
There's no water in that well. There's just no water in that well. I mean, it's stuff used to, bother me, and you really have to let go of that, because one thing I learned one thing in grad school. I took a literary criticism class, and it was about author's intent. As soon as you hit publish, what you meant and what you're meaning and what you wanted to write and communicate doesn't matter. It's how it's interpreted. Who is your audience? How do they interpret it? And I've been through that, and I've had those conversations myself, and it's just simply one line. It's there's no water in that well.
Yeah, it's like, hey, here's a scar. Here's another scar, and all. Yeah. You deal with it, and you live with it. So that's kind of the fun football thing. And then fans are going to have an opportunity to see football a couple of times.
That's great, by the way. I think that's awesome, and thankfully maybe we should go.
What are the days?
I don't even know. I haven't looked. I know that I get my second shot next Wednesday, so I'll be ready to go.
You'll be raring and ready to go. Yeah, I get my second shot the 1st of June. The first shot, I got throwing this out here. I got the Pfizer. My arm, the entry point was sore for about 36 hours, like really sore. But I wouldn't even know that I had it, and I got mine on Monday. It was really bad. So maybe we should. Maybe after this over, I'll look at the dates, and maybe I'll throw my daughter in the car and fly up there to see that, because it would be nice to be outside.
But I think it's great for fans. I think it's great to connect. Sometimes I don't think Kirk connects, or the program doesn't connect the way that I would if I were running Iowa. Just keep everybody in. I mean, I think Nebraska has been smart in the way it's stayed connected to the people. I think sometimes Iowa goes away and gives people a reason to watch the Cubs. If I were doing that, if I were running a college football program, I would give you every reason to not watch the Cubs.
Right. That's a great point. So John Marshall was somebody who'd submitted the question. And by the way, those of you listening, if you didn't hear this last week or didn't see on Twitter, we now have a text group, a Hawkeye podcast text group, and it's free. Just send a text, say, hey, add me, or whatever you want to send to 515-474-7216. And I threw out a text midday today. Mark said, hey, Mark and I are going to podcast tonight. Send any questions in. And we've got about 217 people in the first week. And I really haven't promoted it all that much. And over 10% of the people that got it sent in a question. A number of them were similar, and we appreciate that. So it's going to be a really good tool. Plus, when there's breaking news or other things, I text that stuff out. So please sign up for it. It don't cost nothing. So why not? And that was part one of John Marshall's question about, will Iowa have Deuce? Is there a risk for him to move on? We talked about that a little bit. The second part of his comment question is Tyler Good. He says, quote, Tyler Goodson reminds me of a cross between Akram Wadley and Albert Young. He has a chance to have a special career here. I think this will be his last year here if he stays away from the dreaded injury bug. With incremental improvement this season, is this the last year in the program for Tyler Goodson? Running back, as you've talked about, Mark, I'm sure you use this analogy yourself. There's only a certain amount of tread on those tires. I hadn't considered the notion of him coming out early. I think he'd probably really need to do a lot in both the running game, obviously, but the passing game, have a few more long run breakaways. It's hard for me to see that happening. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's hard for me to see that happening.
I think he's a little more Akram, and Albert Young is 225 pounds. Tyler here is listed at 200. That doesn't mean he's 200, but Albert was put together, different sort of runner, one cut guy. I think Tyler has several cuts. The one thing I don't like about Iowa running back right now, there's only 4 of them on the roster, 4 scholarship guys on the roster, and one of them is Ivory Kelly Martin, who's hurt. So I don't know what they have in recruiting. I don't know. I think that health is going to be a big deal for running back this year. I love Tyler Goodson. Anybody who finally got Kirk to pull out the vintage Wildcat. That kid did something right, so I'm good with that. Leaving early, I agree with your point on tread on the tire. That's a big deal for running backs. What would the numbers look like for an Iowa running back to skip his last year? 1,600 yards, 1,500 yards, 20 touchdowns?
Well, it's only happened once, and that was Sean Green, and that was about 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns.
1,800 yards, 20 touchdowns. And he came out early. He came out early.
And he came out early, and he also was a little bit older. He'd gone the prep school route. And then
he would have been 24. He and Tyler Sash would have been 20. And Dallas Clark. Guys, you want to have a category of guys who would have been 24 as rookies? Those 3. And they decided, no, I'm going to get paid.
Right. Which, yes. But Tyler Goodson will be, I don't know, maybe 21.
I don't know his age.
I mean, this is his 3rd year in the program. So I think he's got talent. I think that he's certainly got pro potential talent. It's just hard for me to say, I think he will, when that really hasn't happened too much at Iowa. You really have to put forth almost like a Wisconsin running back, Jonathan Taylor type year to do that, in my opinion. Or who knows? I mean, Liddell's there now. Maybe they start doing different things in the passing game. Tyler's definitely has the receiving skills. He's like Akram in that regard, certainly. And they use him a lot in that fashion. Last year was
such a fractured year too. It's hard.
Yes.
He's elusive. He's got some power behind him. It's hard for me to make that leap to where he's an NFL prospect.
And will the offensive line provide the opportunity this year?
Yeah, the 2 new tackles, man. That could be ugly.
Could be ugly. Could be a little lookout time. From Tim Messer, who is your returning breakout player on offense and defense this year for football? I'm guessing you won't have any insight into any true freshmen until after spring practice. I certainly don't, but there was a lot of chatter on Twitter this week about the receiver, the incoming kid from Nebraska, Johnson.
Keegan Johnson, yeah.
Keegan Johnson looking good, looking the part, looking to be a standout. Returning breakout player on defense. Just seeing the progression of Van Valkenburg last year from the start of the year, where he kind of looked like you're in the Army now and not really sure what you're doing in its basic training. But by the end of the year, he was getting his union card. I mean, he was there. He was being disruptive. I think he's got a chance to make an elevation. But you know what? Having said all that, I'll go with Campbell on defense.
Are you talking about breakout, stand-up player? Okay, you were doing a lot of rambling, and then you just swooped in and took mine.
Sorry about that.
No, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with.
Go with your guy, man.
Hit me again. Yeah.
YA.
Yeah, YA Black. I'm gonna go with that one. 6'5", 280, probably 285-ish. I imagine what he's getting by on right now is probably pure power and pure speed, quickness. So I imagine that, once in the Big Ten, more hands will be on him. But man, I like what I've heard, and he's kind of exactly what they need.
Yes, he is.
So that's that breakout. I'll go first on offense.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I was going to freak everybody out and say, I'm sorry, I'm flipping through. I was going to freak everybody out and say, Sam Laporta, but he was Iowa's most targeted guy last year. So that's not
a breakout.
Not exactly going. He's already broken out. I'm going to go offensive line, and I would love to see Jack Plum become the next. I think right now I'm saying Jack Plum because I think he's got the most in the bank to be able to maybe see Iowa's next big money ass kicking tackle. Big money NFL guy. Right now he's in that shoot. This might be the year where we'll see, does he fit that? Is that him? Is he capable of that? So I think you need to see that. I think tackle or there's three guys I'll mention there. I think Jack Plum, Mason Richmond, and David Koff. I think that's how you say it. Maybe Connor Colby fits in there, but I think Iowa has a tradition of having their tackles getting paid. I think that's got to drive some of these guys into overdrive. And right now, I think Plum is probably the best, but the recruiting hype that David Koff and Connor Colby got. It's intriguing, and you know what? 3-year linemen, they're happening more and more, and they've happened at Iowa.
Yeah, it's rare, but you're right. That has happened. I'm going to go with Tracy. I think that given the exodus,
that's a good one.
Smith and Amir Smith-Marset last year, I think Iowa's going to be forced to bring the Ferrari out of the garage more than it normally likes to. I think he's a flat-out playmaker, and I think that he's going to break out, and I think it will be, oh, man, why didn't we do that last year? Why didn't we do more of that? I think he's got the opportunity to literally break out, so that would be my pick.
Arlen Bruce, he's my intriguing wide receiver. I liked everything he brought as a prep. I love the 5'10", 200-pound sort of slot guy. That's Iowa's healthy in the slot. Iowa's got an offense that can at least move the chains on a regular basis.
Yeah, and Arlen Bruce, was it? I don't know if it was back to back, but I know that he won it at least once, the Simone Award in Kansas City for the best football player in the Kansas City metro area. I can't remember if Liddell Betts won that, but that little guy from Kansas State played in the NFL a long time, number 43. Why can't I remember his name?
Sproles.
Yeah, Sproles, same high school
Sproles,
as Bruce went to. He won that award. I mean, it's a very coveted award, and Bruce won that. Then, of course, he went up to Ankeny this last year to play. I think he only got to play 5-6 games because of the eligibility concerns, etc. But that's a big deal. He's a playmaker. It's like, get that ball in that guy's hands.
If they're mentioning Keegan Johnson right now, that's a good sign.
That's a really good sign.
They need in my opinion, I like Tyrone Tracy more as a slot, more as a Z. I like my X guy to be at least 6'1". Keegan Johnson 6'1", Desmond Huxton 6'3". I like more of a Brandon type X
Brandon
wide
Smith.
receiver.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So Bruce won it in 19. He didn't win it twice. The year before Bruce was Graham Murch from Blue Valley North High School, which is the high school district that my home abides in. Liddell Betts won it in 96. The person that won it in 95, the year before Liddell Betts won it, Arlen Bruce's dad won that award.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting.
At the same high school, Olathe North, which was also the same high school for Darren Sproles, who won that award in 2000. Some other Nathan Shielhouse, I remember him. That was at Illinois.
Yeah.
He's
a coach somewhere now, I think.
You may be right. Yeah, it's a pretty long and good list. All right, other questions.
We didn't talk about basketball yet.
We didn't talk about basketball, and I'm gonna dovetail. Probably of the 24, 25 questions that we did wind up getting, a good half of them was if we would talk about the transfer portal and Iowa's possibilities within the transfer portal. And what I'm going to do now is let's just we're going to go to screen share time for those of you that are watching the video, and don't worry for those of you that are listening. We will also be talking about this, so you'll be able to see it too. Can you see the share? That's not going the way that I want to see it. I'm going to stop screen sharing there. Do it a little different way here. Hold on a second. Screen share. Pull that up. Application window. That's what I want. That's what I wanted. Okay. So this is Liam Robbins. Liam Robbins, center at Minnesota last year, was at Drake for a couple of years, transferred out of Drake. Last year at Minnesota, he averaged 11.7 points per game, 6.6 rebounds per game, but this is the number right here. 2.7 blocks per game.
Yes, rim protector.
Led the Big Ten. I think next was 2.3, and then after that it was like 1.8. So you're talking about a guy that he had 62 blocks in 23 games. That's getting it done. It's not quite AC Earl level, but it would be the best shot blocker Iowa's probably had maybe since AC. And, his per 40-minute statistics, really good. 19 points, 4.4 blocks, and 10.7 rebounds. Obviously, he's not going to play 40 minutes. To me, Mark, when I watched Liam play this year, I was blown away when Iowa went up there to play against him. I hadn't seen what he'd done at Drake. I don't really watch Drake basketball all that much because, frankly, for me, there's not a lot of times where there's a reason to. And
just when they're playing in the tournament, that's it.
Well, that's it. And
the MVC tournament, you got to watch them there because they're on.
Yes, and when they're in the tournament, and a lot of people in Des Moines Sports Talk Radio pretend to care. Yes, I did say that.
You said that, not me.
Yeah, and I mean it. And I mean it. There's like one or two guys that I know really, really do care. Andy Fails, but that's about it. And everyone's, oh, what a cute story. I've lived it.
Yes.
We'll call it out.
I agree with you, but I probably shouldn't say that.
That's all right. You don't have to.
Actually, I covered the Bulldogs in the MVC tournament they won, the Emmenecker era.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Drake took that place over.
It was fun. And I was on the radio at that time, and I was sent out to Drake and March Madness stuff, and it was fun, but I didn't really care. It was a job. I wouldn't have done it I wouldn't have done it for fun, but it was fun doing it, if that makes sense.
That does.
Robbins, I was really impressed with him. His footwork's fantastic. You mentioned rim protector. He would be an incredible get for the Iowa basketball program.
So that's
7 feet.
Go ahead. 7 feet.
235.
Big kid. The competition 11.7 points, 6.6 rebounds.
Yeah.
2.7 blocks, major factor in the Gophers' 5 wins. I'm reading the Star Tribune.
Yeah.
Marcus Fuller. Got Ed Conroy, it's his uncle, who was fired at the end of the season.
Coach there. Yeah.
So he's at Vanderbilt now.
Mm-hmm.
So
he's at Vanderbilt. Jerry Stackhouse is putting together. Jerry Stackhouse got a 4-star and a 5-star recruit. It won't be during Liam's time there, but yeah, to me it kind of seems. And this, I'm just talking about what I've read. I've read from the 247 guys. I've read from.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the competition is, and that's important.
Yeah, I think the Vanderbilt angle. I mean, he didn't really grow up an Iowa fan, from everything I can surmise, but he had 18 and. He had 18 points against Iowa. He had 18 against Michigan State. He had 27 against Ohio State. He had 22 against Michigan and that defense and Dickinson. I think obviously what's the best thing Iowa's got going for it? Well, his hometown's from Davenport. Easy for the hometown folks to come see you.
Hour and 10, 20 minutes away, hour and 20.
If that. And you've got what Iowa just did with Luka Garza. You've got one of the best post-feeding programs and point guards in McCaffrey in the country, a program that clearly is telling you the truth when they say they will funnel the basketball through you. Look what we did with Garza. Garza probably averaged 14 to 16 field goal attempts per game. And if he didn't, he would have played second halves sometimes. So that's a really compelling story. It's like, hey, Luka Garza was just the unanimous player of the year this year. He probably should have been player of the year last year, but he was runner-up. And in some instances, he was player of the year. This year, he was a consensus player of the year. He's just the 12th ever Big Ten basketball player to be the national player of the year, the Naismith, which is the Heisman Trophy of college basketball. Luka won them all. I'm not saying you're going to beat Luka, Liam, but I'm saying we're likely going to give you the opportunity, and it's all going to rest on you. I think it's a compelling pitch.
So then we should probably get to know Filip Rebraca.
Yes, Filip Rebraca.
Only because your confidence makes it should make everybody a little bit nervous.
My confidence in what?
No, your pitch, I guess. Your pitch.
Oh, my pitch. Okay,
yeah,
I'm a little too excited.
Your pitch to Robbins, and I guess I didn't know the 40-minute numbers, which are hellacious, and I did know the blocking, which was a big deal. But
yeah,
Rebraca sounds like
Rebraca's per 40 minutes numbers are better than Liam's, but he also played at North Dakota.
He played in North Dakota. Also, what is the market for Robbins? What is the market for Rebraca?
Well, to me, Rebraca is more like Tulsa, Penn State. I think the percentages just relative to competition for Rebraca is probably more in Iowa's favor, but I think Iowa can take both. I think they would take both. I don't think this is an either-or situation for Iowa. Rebraca's 6'9", 222. This last year for North Dakota, he averaged 16.8 points per game, 7.6 rebounds per game. He attempted 41 threes in 26 games. So he's not, and he made 15 of them. Okay. He's not the stretch four per se. I wouldn't call him that. He's more of a nuanced Euro power four without as much stretch, but can. I don't know the type of offense that he played in. I don't know if it was conducive to motion like what Iowa has. Maybe in Iowa's offense, he could get up more threes. But, he did the work on the defensive rebounds, and on a per 40 basis, he's 21 points, 9 rebounds. This guy would be a really, really good get as well. I think he would fit in well in a mature player in Iowa's system. And I think this is an if. I think if Iowa got both Robbins and Rebraca, you're talking about a defensive team that's vastly improved. And my assumptions, Marc, are all without Joe Wieskamp. I just think that Joe's gone.
I agree.
That's my opinion.
I agree. And just opinion from me too.
Right. So I think you're talking about a really good defensive team.
How many 3-pointers did Nunji shoot last year? Just, I don't know. You probably don't have that at the top of your head.
Well, I can probably, my guess is probably somewhere around around 40, but I'm going to pull it up here real quick and let you know that. Rebraca, what I say, Rebraca did 45. I'm using an old broadcasting tool to stretch this out while I'm looking because it sounds like I'm actually talking and I'm not really searching, but I'm doing both at the same time. He had 47. He made 15 of 47. And Rebraca, good pull there, Marc. Rebraca was 15 of 41. So there you go.
If he could be Nunji like, which I think sounds like he's a different athlete. Probably doesn't move quite as well as Nunji, but he's not. I don't think he's quite as tall, but he's kind of fits that. You're right. He's probably not just looking at his body type. Probably not a stretch 4. But if he could reasonably be a Nunji-like character in Iowa's offense, Iowa has room for both of them.
Right. Yeah. And Nunji's shot blocking was better, but they've got room for both of them because right now, Marc, who's your power forward? Well, is it Chris Murray? Is it to me Agundale is probably more of a classic 5, and he's not ready to play yet.
Right.
And he won't be ready to play yet. I don't think they don't really have a true 4. I don't want to see Keegan play out of position. No, but
I'm not sure what his position is yet, but I don't want to see him play out of position.
And we talked about that a little on a previous episode. I think in today's game, in Iowa style, you start running motion. It's not the way that it was in the old days. You're the 5, you're the 4, you're the 3. 3 goes here. It's a little more nuanced than that, and there's a little more position flexibility than that. So I don't think Keegan will get out. And I think Keegan playing some traditional 4 in spots when he has a matchup issue. Because if you get Robbins and Rebraca, and folks, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying if you got them both.
You got to put that in there too.
I do for myself, ladies and gentlemen, for myself. But if you get
I guess hearing this, it's John's email you hit or John's.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
He's saying these guys are coming. I'm not.
I did not say they're coming. I did not say they're coming.
Just kidding.
I'm going to put both of our Twitter handles up here right now since you did that. You're talking a 7-footer in Robbins who was the best defensive rim protector in the Big Ten Conference last year. The best.
Yes.
With space.
Which matters.
It matters a ton. It matters a ton because Iowa's offensive efficiency is not going to be close to where it was last year. So it even matters more. And then you have, hypothetically, you get a 6'9" Rebraca that can play that, 4 role for you. And then you allow Keegan to be your 3 also at 6'8", but he's long, like he's 6'10", and he's versatile. He's probably your best overall pound for pound, man for man, on ball defender on the team, taking the other team's most athletic wing player. And then, depending on Connor McCaffrey's health, you got Joe Toussaint in there maybe a little bit. You got Perkins that can come in and mix it. You got CJ Frederick, and then you got Patrick McCaffrey. Sometimes you could go Robbins, Rebraca, Keegan Murray, Patrick McCaffrey. We're talking 6'8", 6'9", 7 feet, and bring in whatever guard you want to bring in. Telling you what, there's a lot of options. It gets me really excited. I just hope they get them both. And if you said, John, which one, if you could only get one, who would it be? It'd be Robbins, hand down. And that's no slight to Rebraca. I'd be happy if Iowa got Rebraca, but Robbins changes the trajectory, in my opinion, of next year's team from a team. If they don't get anybody, you're talking about a team probably somewhere 35 to 45 in the country-ish. But if you get Robbins, to me, and you get nobody else, you're talking about a team that's knocking on top 25 doors because of the defense I can play. And I still think that they'd be a top 50 offensive team, maybe higher than that. There's not been many Fran McCaffrey era teams, Marc, that haven't been in the top 50 or top 40 in offensive efficiency.
Well, I that Vanderbilt thing creeped in my head, and I hope you're right. I mean, I think you're right. I think Robbins means you probably start the year in the top 25. And Rebraca means there's questions. It means you probably, I don't want to say tournament. You probably have tournament team. I mean, I would put the general ballpark there. Those are the only 2 names I've heard. And the registered kid, Bain, Matt
Bain, yeah.
Pulled that out. And I think David Eichholt grabbed the other one. Was it 24/7?
Yeah.
I just want to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah,
those guys
right.
Kicking some. I think
Absolutely.
John and I talked about basketball recruiting in the pre-show. The most underserved audience. I mean, if you're a huge college basketball fan, who do you go to for recruiting stuff? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the 247 guys are on the come there. And I don't have we both love Tom, and Blair at Rivals does a great job. Rob
He's
does
football
good work.
go. Blair is
right.
Man, Blair's a
yep.
I would like to have him on the podcast sometime.
Yeah,
he's got some more stories.
Blair
he's been bird dogging a long damn time.
He really has. He was a Nighthawk a long time ago.
That's right. I forgot about that.
On the Hawk's Nest message board. And Blair and I used to have like a Cold War. I used to kind of have a Cold War with Tom and Blair for reasons long ago. Tommy and I patched all that up at the Rose Bowl. What a beautiful place to patch it up. One of my favorite meetings we've ever. It was just really, really cool. But you're right. In the Fran McCaffrey era, let's throw out year one because he was trying to crawl out of the Todd Licklider outhouse.
Crater.
Every other year, Iowa has never been below 43rd nationally in offensive efficiency. And
it's kind of like Phil Parker's defense, top 25.
It is. And if you could next year, if Robbins was on that team, they're absolutely top 35 in my opinion defense. And then you are top 35 defense and probably a top 35 offense. That's a 6, 7, 8 seed at worst, in my opinion. So
a lot of chips need to fall. But
chips need to fall.
I'm glad we did get to the basketball. And if I had somebody's damn portal plug-in password and actually I think it's kind of complicated. Like 2-step system I've heard, but
you can be the designated portal watcher for
I'm not doing that. You know what? I probably would just give it a refresh every once in a while.
Yeah.
I think right now it's mind-boggling what is out there, and I don't want to hear old coaches cry. I mean, I just like, whatever. You had a good run. Shut up. I don't want to hear old coaches bitch about how can you have a team when your whole team transfers 1 year. It's the system now, and you got to work with it. You got to make it happen. You got to figure it out. It's the system now, and it's probably not going back. Yeah, it does attack your team, but you just have to build your team in a different way. That's just how it is.
And this offseason going into next year will be unlike anything that we'll probably see for a while until the NCAA would grant, free-for-all transfers every year. I think they'll get to a point where you can transfer once freely, but after that, you may have to sit.
That's what it felt like. Barta was on the transfer committee for a long. I don't know where it's at now, but that was where it was at. That the transfer committee was like, yeah, okay, enough of the crap. The rules, everything is getting challenged now. We want to get this out of the courts. We want to make it easy. One transfer. After that, no.
I'm good with that. Actually. I think it's a fair compromise because you
lose a year or something.
Something like that. So this year's transfer portal is just it's a free for all. Blame it on COVID, but it is. And think about this: there's still scholarship limits at these schools, and there's a finite number of scholarships available at your Kansases and North Carolinas and Dukes and all. There's a lot of guys that are leaving some programs that may find that there's not room at the end for them, and they thought that there would otherwise be. So we shall see.
And think about that as a coach. You get done with a really emotional run. I'm talking about through McCaffrey's eyes right now. Emotional run, best player in school history, and Luka and Jordan Bohannon and the fun there, and his kids and the run he's made. Okay, now you have to be an expert and give a scholarship offer to 1,500 players. Mm-hmm. You have to figure out if 1,500 players can fit in your system.
Yeah,
would even want to come to your school,
right?
And so it's again, I'm not going to complain about coaches and coach. People used to bitch about Fred Hoiberg and the way he did the transfer thing.
Yeah.
Guess what? It was not illegal. It was absolutely perfectly legal to do that. Now, did it always fit? It didn't really work at the end, blah, blah, blah. But and now
it usually worked for him.
It did. And it came through. And you know what? That's how he built his team. And he didn't. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Now I think everybody knows the transfer thing, and
Right.
I still think Fred could have 8 transfers, and he probably will, and remake that team fairly quickly. McCaffrey and the transfer thing, it just seems slower, and I think fans get a little bit. There's an instant gratification that comes with recruiting, and I think the transfer portal actually speeds that up a bit, John. In that, I'm out of this school, get me to my next school, and you figure out those guys have already been through recruiting and they don't want to go through it again. So it's a hell of a deal to have to be. That's a lot of extemporaneous knowledge you're going to pour out on a player all of a sudden, and big decisions though. That I would say this year out of most years, maybe this would be the biggest year for Iowa to have success there.
It's important. I think without any additions, and if Joe Wieskamp leaves, like you and I both feel that he will, that's a 10-11 seed, maybe. I think
that's
that
would a scrappy team that people will love, and because they'll punch through and they'll beat a Michigan, they'll beat somebody like that, but they'll lose a lot of games, like to say Iowa State, maybe not Iowa State next year, but Minnesota and Indiana, a lot of agonizing games, but you'll still watch,
right?
Maybe.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Well, of course, anyway. I'll watch, but it would be better with Robbins. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
We have any other Twitter?
Yeah,
Twitter questions.
We had so many, and thank you to everyone who sent them in. I told you in advance that we wouldn't get to them all. I mean, we're already going at an hour or so right now as it is. Dan Schultz said this might be a dumb question, but with the entire wrestling team coming back, is Iowa the favorite to win the NCAA tournament again?
Yeah.
I'm terrified of the young Penn State team. The answer is yes, and that's a really good Penn State team. But yes, Iowa should be. I mean, Kemmer, that was a great Twitter tweet that they threw out with Iowa wrestling. Kemmer returning for his 7th year, and they had him dressed up in a doctor's outfit, and they had a Tommy Boy reference leading up to it, saying a lot of people, go to college for 7 years. Is like, yeah, doctors. So yeah, and then Brian Hurley, the strong-legged one, former Iowa kicker Brian Hurley, who I think Hawkeye Recap is his Twitter handle, and he's got a really kick-ass website with a bunch of Iowa video highlights on it. The final basketball standings, Iowa ending at 13. Is that where we should have been all year, given the Pac-12 teams being underrated? Listen, 13. I looked this up today. 14 of the 18 weeks there was an AP poll issued, Iowa was in the top 10. Iowa has started the year ranked and ended the year ranked and been ranked the entire season just 4 times in the last 31 years. That was 1996, 1993, I think, 2006, and then this year. Maybe not 1993, but it's only happened 4 times. So you know what? 13th, I'm fine with it. And then I want to end on one thing, Mark. The NIL, the name, image, and likeness, obviously is still a very hot topic. You had, I think, Oregon has some legislation introduced. Maryland just had it passed their House and Senate, and now it's going to the governor to sign. You have, I think, 9 states now that have passed approvals for name, image, and likeness. You're talking about Florida, California, New Jersey, Nebraska, Michigan, Colorado, Georgia. All of these states have passed legislation that will allow college athletes in their state universities to be able to profit from their own names, images, and likenesses. You have a significant recruiting inequity brewing for states that don't pass it. Jack Whitver, an Iowa State senator who was responsible for getting Senate File 245 in the Iowa State House to a vote and be heard, chose to not let it died in committee, if you will. And it's going to put Iowa and Iowa State potentially in some significant recruiting disadvantages, because if I'm a star high school player, and a lot of these guys think they're stars, even if they're not necessarily, everybody thinks they're going to go to the next level and be a star.
Everybody thinks they're going to the NFL, John.
That's right. So this will impact their decisions of most people. If you can go play and be a star at a school where you can make money from your name, image, and likeness, or you can go be a star at a school where you can't make money from your own name, image, and likeness, where are you likely going to end up? I'm going where the money is. And if I was a parent, I'd say the same thing.
Yeah.
Go get paid. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
when the shit hits the fan on this, will it be Jack Whitfer's fault? Or will it be just amorphous Iowa Senate?
That's a really good question. And
because people are going to want to know who to blame.
Right, for sure. I don't know enough to say yes, but I don't know enough to say no. I don't know enough.
Was Jordan crestfallen, disappointed?
Disappointed for sure. And crestfallen, I wouldn't say. He's a fighter. He's going to
he's feisty as hell, yeah.
But there's one thing I wanted to bring up that somebody asked. Christian Walker said this, and this is why I want to tie into why I'm such an advocate of name, image, and likeness right now at this phase of my life, and athletes being able to profit on it. At the end of the question, he said, Jordan Bohannon in his 6th year, or is it the 7th year? Time to move on. Okay. Now, of course, Christian, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. To me, if you want an example of why I think athletes should be allowed to financially capitalize on their name, image, and likeness, let's talk about Jordan Bohannon. After Jordan's sophomore year at Iowa, he was the star. He was the star of the team. He was averaging about 13, 14 points per game. He just made 43% of his threes, and he was on Chris Kingsbury level as far as attempts. Not quite Kingsbury attempts, but Jordan's freshman year was great, double figures. Sophomore year was even better. That's the year that he was, Jordan Bohannon was making game-winning shots. He was the face of the team, not Luka. And even Jordan's star was burning brighter than even Luka's and Joe's at that time. If Jordan would have been able to capitalize off his name, image, and likeness, I would wager anything. He would have made 6 figures a year his last 3 years at Iowa with endorsement deals that he would have been able to sign at the likes of Hy-Vee or, Billion Auto or pick your companies. I know that he would have. If not 100,000, you know what? If you want to argue with me, I'll say at least 50,000 a year. Okay, but I think it's more than that. But right now, Jordan's career, my opinion, it's over. I did not talk with Jordan about it on the interview, and I did not disrespect him to ask him off air what his decision is. He needs to make that announcement on his own podcast. It's not my business.
So he's still considering
he's still considering it per episode 31 of the Standpoint podcast that aired earlier this week. He says he's still considering things. So now there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, move on, or yeah, you're a distraction, or yeah, good riddance, things like that. Christian, I'm not singling you out. I'm not saying you did that. This just gives me the opportunity to talk about why I think it's important for athletes to capitalize on their NIL when they have the chance. Because for some of these guys, this is going to be the peak earnings opportunities of their lives. That's not to say that when they get, statistics show that, you get in your 40s, your early to mid 40s to your mid 50s is your highest year as a wage earner. But not many times you get an opportunity at 18, 19, 20 to make 6 figures. You don't. And what that can do with you in compounding interest and the shelf life for these guys. Marc, you talked about it. You talked about Cavante Martin-Manley and some other guys, McNutt, these guys, if they would have been able to capitalize off their name, image, and likeness during their senior years, junior and senior years, they would have made some money. But what happens, and I think Scott Docterman brought this up on his podcast with Rob Howe about, the clothing line, the 2-star clothing line that Cavante Martin-Manley wanted to do. If he would have been able to work on that while he was in the program versus after he left, and it's on to the next guy who's a receiver, because it's in and out, here today, gone tomorrow, forgotten for a lot of people. Your marketability goes off the cliff after you're gone. Maybe with the exception of a Luka, but Megan Gustafson's earning potential in Iowa City right now is nothing compared to what it would have been 3-4 years ago.
Marv McNutt was always Scott's favorite when Scott and I did this podcast or this version of it. I didn't say much, because I knew Scott would say a lot, but he always,
the new boss, same as the old boss.
But he always his example, and I always agreed, was Marvin McNutt. I mean, as a senior, I mean, look at the numbers he put up as a Iowa wide receiver, John. And I know you're keenly aware of the running in place squad. Marvin was not that.
Sprint squad, yeah.
Sprint squad.
Yeah.
Marvin was money. I mean, literally, and not well. I guess not literally, but he would have gotten paid a lot. My example, not really counter to Scott, but my example was Mitch King, country music fan, probably. I don't know. Maybe I'm not. Sorry to lump you in there if you're not a country music fan, Mitch, but an Iowa shit kicking guy. I mean, a Bush Light guy, long Thor hair, and an ass kicker on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not. Wasn't. And this was always the thing with Mitch. When he got older and older, you started looking at the NFL potential, and you kind of wince a little bit. He hung out probably as long as I thought he would, a couple of years. Mm-hmm. It was just he was never going to hit that interest level. Just the fandom that he had going. I mean, he was a damn rock star. I mean, he was, and he wore it well. And he played to the crowd. Exactly. Connected and resonated. He did that really well. He would have made He would have made six. He'd
have made six figures in his career.
Probably. But this is 2008 money. So,
well, they had money in 2008.
I know, but 50. Yeah, he'd have been 50, 100K guy. I mean, if we're throwing that number out there, but there are
Josie Jewell getting a sponsorship with Pioneer or somebody like that.
Josie was about it. But I think the other one, Megan Gustafson, the way you and I've been saying this about Jordan for a long time. He's got a great pedestal now. He's got a great platform. He's got a great platform. I don't know if it's going to reverberate the way it does when he's playing basketball.
It won't.
Iceland.
Right. It won't. It won't. And that's the whole point. These guys, these men, these women, they need the opportunity to monetize something that we all get a chance to monetize while the iron is hot.
Yes, I 100%. We're on the same page here.
Yeah. I don't even know why I'm so passionate about it. I don't have a dog in the fight. Listen, that's the first time I've ever talked to Jordan Bohannon was Monday. And I sure as heck didn't have his cell phone number before that. Remember, I'm one of the guys that said he was a fallback scholarship player and he probably wouldn't make it in the Big Ten. So it's not like he's a family member or a close friend or anything. Maybe it's because I've got an 18-year-old and I'm a dad. I don't know whatever the reason. Maybe it's just because it seems like it's patently fair for these athletes to have this opportunity.
I have an answer.
What is it?
John, you are an entrepreneur to the nth degree.
That's probably it.
Capitalism, entrepreneurship, that's is in your damn wheelhouse. So we're setting up the Hawkeye podcast so we can have players on and build their brands, right?
That's what we're going to do. That's right. We're going to help them do that.
Cha-ching.
Let's talk more about that after the show. There's a whole consulting business we could start.
But seriously, you're an entrepreneur, and the potential this has. I keep going back to the story I wrote about Josie Jewell and his outlaw farming technology. Mm-hmm. That was basically his coursework. This you tie in some entrepreneurship type courses to these athletes and how they're building themselves. It all fits together. And if it's done well, you can make it educational. Absolutely. And get them paid. So, it makes too much sense. So it'll all be screwy.
They've got the Tippy School of Business over there. Let me give you some advice. Starting up your own 2-star clothing line. If you're Cavante Martin Manley, when you're a junior and you're on pace to break the school record, and your head coach really, really wants you to be the all-time receiving receptions record holder, if you know what I'm saying. That's a better intelligence, education, degree earning than what you're going to learn in a book.
Yep.
Is the real world. It just is. And like Jordan has said on our podcast and multiple, because it makes so much sense. Why do you, gym regular college student, who's not an athlete, why did you go to college? Why did your parents send you to college? Why did they save? Why are you taking out? Why are you going to college? Well, the answer is not for the experience. That's way down. It's so I can make more money later in life, so I can provide and earn a living. I'm going to college with the hopes that in doing so, I put myself ahead, or at least put myself on even ground with other people who are also trying to get the same jobs that I'm getting. It's about bettering yourself. What's the problem? What's the problem?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I see the entrepreneurial part of it now, and I'm excited for him to get to it. It's too bad that Iowa earliest 2022. Then I guess.
I don't know if that's the case, but that's probably my hunch. I'm not sure that it's dead and done and gone. But I mean, I know here in Kansas, I've been hitting my refresh button every day on my Google search, state of Kansas sports betting laws. I do it once a week, and they've got until May, and then their sessions are done for the year. I'm like, what the heck's this? Maybe it's the same way in Iowa. I don't know. But these state legislators, they're not there, 12 months out of the year. And it's so who knows? I don't know. But
now we shine a little light on it. You can bet one of the writers will be, I would think they'd be all over that, but who knows? I mean, when I was in the chair, and I actually said this to Brian Ferentsen in one of our podcasts, I was hoping I'd be out before the NIL became a thing.
You said that?
Yes, I said that and Brian was he was funny about it. He said he was pro. I mean, he was like, yeah, we got to let these kids use their brains and maximize themselves in that way. And he was positive. And I was like, yeah, you know what? It's another thing I got to figure out.
Well, yeah. Well, it's fun. But
it is fun. The way you broke it down just now was really good.
I can't believe I didn't see why I had this passion for it. I think you're right. To me, everything, the limitations and the obstacles in place and the forces that are against this, to me, feels like anti-everything.
It feels like shackles.
Yes. And it's glass ceilings. I left the energy company I was working for in Tulsa, not because I necessarily wanted to make more money. I just wanted the opportunity to do that. I wanted a removal of glass ceilings, and that's why I didn't fit well within corporate America, because I felt limited. And when I wake up in the morning and I feel limited, I need to find something else to do. These guys are being limited, and I'm all for them getting the chance to be unlimited.
I think you nailed it.
All right. Well, Marc, that's all I have on my brain. You know what? I listen to all you and Scott Dockerman's On Iowa podcast. I listen to everyone. And sometimes I even slowed them down from 1.5 speed to normal speed because I wanted the 2 hours to last longer because I was doing more drives. And I was like, man, these guys would go for 2 hours. We're going for 1.5 hours, and it feels like that we just got going, and we could probably go for another 2 hours. You're an easy guy to talk to. I think that's what it is.
It's me.
I think that it is. It's the common denominator. It's you.
I am in my heart and soul. I'm probably a farmer at a fence. And I come from a long back. Let me see. I found my mom keeps telling me these family secrets now that I'm kind of near again. And my grandfather was not a farmer. He was a soil conservationist, but he had a hobby farm. So I don't know if I'm 2 or 3 generations off the farm.
Right.
But that farmer just talking at the fence thing, and I think let me see. Either Bruce Nelson or Mike Klinkenborg. I went out to visit, they grew up in farms, and I went out to visit them, and I got to talking to their dad. Mike's dad was passed, and got talking to his mom and his grandfather, who was in the Korean War. It was fascinating to talk to him.
Right.
And then talking to Bruce's dad, the farmers get chatty when they get to town. I think I got a little bit of that, but Scott just talks too much.
Well, I'm filling the role of Scott because heaven knows I talk too much. Well, we appreciate you all for listening. Really, from the bottom of our hearts, we launched this on March the 4th, and we were blown away by the number of folks that found this so quickly and listened to it. We appreciate all your feedback. We're looking forward to doing a lot of things. We're very much appreciative of our sponsors for this in Barntown Brewing. You can visit their website, barntownbrewing.com, to Heartland Flagpoles and Flags. That's heartlandflags.com, as well as Fong's Pizza, fongspizza.com. They make this even more fun because, we get a chance to monetize off our names, images, and likenesses. So we thank them, and we would really appreciate it if you would also give them each a shot in their own respective marketing verticals, if you will. And that will wrap up this installment of HawkeyePodcast.com. For Marc, I'm John. We will talk to you the next time.